listening to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Gregor on dailyfaceoff.com.
To episode 73, the Tyler Toffoli edition of the DFO Rundown. Coming to you live once again from the woodjerseys.com studio. And fitting, I've got the Seattle Kraken wood jersey behind me, and Frank is actually in Seattle. So on the road for episode 73. Of course, you're getting set, Frank, for the huge season opener on Saturday night in Seattle. And I went online for fun. I was looking, like, it's obviously sold out. Like, tickets on the secondary market were going for like 900 bones for the cheapest one.
Yeah, it's crazy. I saw something pop up the other day. It was a charity auction, and it was $1,000 per ticket, and you'd get. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. What do you get for $1,000?" That's the price per ticket. Like, oh, okay. So this is it for charity. I see. So, yeah, I can actually just out my window here to the left, I can see the Space Needle, and just beyond that, I can see just a small piece of that famous Climate Pledge Arena roof, a historic structure. It's still, if you haven't read much about the construction of this arena, it's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in terms of engineering relating to hockey. They took this huge, massive, historic roof, and they essentially lifted it up and put it on concrete stilts. And then they took the old Climate Pledge Arena, used to be Seattle Center, whatever they called it when the Seattle Sonics played there, and they dug down 120 or 140 feet and then built an entire new $1.6 billion stadium beneath it. And it's also one of the greenest stadiums in the league. I'm actually looking forward to getting a tour on Saturday, getting to see a little bit more. And I mean, what a place, just the different little wrinkles that they've added. 12,000 plants living inside the arena. The rainwater that's collected from the roof, it goes into a cistern, it's filtered, and that's the water that they use to make the ice. So you guys know, up in Edmonton, you're known for having the best ice. Well, Rogers Place did not have the best ice for the longest time. The Seattle Kraken have never played on this ice. They did not have any preseason games there. They had a Foo Fighters concert on Wednesday night. Then on Friday night, they've got Coldplay opening up the building. And on Saturday night, boom, the Kraken are there for morning skate on Saturday morning. It's a quick turnaround. My guess is the ice is going to be pretty terrible to start. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they can pull off in what should be a pretty magical home opener.
Yeah, we'll get lots more into Seattle later on in the pod. A few things, Frank, you had tweeted out earlier this week about the Jets and, expected them to have another case. And now it's Mark Scheifele. They played with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen last night. And, that's never ideal. But it's Scheifele and it's Wheeler. And, this is one, it's just kind of a reminder that, even though the vast majority of players are vaccinated, you can still get it, and they're just worried about the spread more than anything else with the Jets. But in your conversations, as I've had a few people talk to, there is some concern about cancellation of games and if that happens, because last year obviously we saw it with Montreal and Vancouver, and they had pretty brutal schedules because of it. What are you hearing? Because from people I've talked to, they don't they know that obviously they would reschedule them, but they don't have that buffer planned like they had last year.
Yeah, there's not nearly enough flexibility in the schedule this year, and it's especially complicated being an Olympic year. And so they're going to try and do everything they can to avoid canceling games. These teams are at the ready now. They should have some sort of idea on their positive tests, especially if they need to, with some rapid tests, in enough time to get some players in. And so there's definitely a level of concern with the Winnipeg Jets at the moment, because even though Mark Scheifele was the only player that was added to their COVID protocol list, I'm told that a number of other players had tested positive in their rapid tests on Wednesday. So they were prepared to be missing, more guys than certainly just Scheifele. And then their additional tests ended up coming back negative. So there's definitely been a little bit of an issue so far this season with some false positives and also some false negatives that have complicated the picture. But, the Jets have sort of let it be known within their group that until they get 7 days beyond this initial test from Blake Wheeler that kind of gives everyone in their traveling party enough time for the virus to potentially show itself either symptomatically or asymptomatically in tests, that they're all sort of on high alert at the moment. And the protocol itself shifts as well for the NHL. You go from vaccinated players being tested once every 3 days in the normal protocols to when someone, has a positive test and then another one, then you go to every single day in addition to layering in the rapid test. So certainly not an easy situation. The Jets have also adapted and bounced the media from their event level. There's no in-person press conferences. Everything is shifted back to Zoom. I'm not entirely sure why the media is the first sort of group there. That's not the reason Blake Wheeler tested positive. But the Jets are trying to do everything they can. I think that's a message and a signal that they're trying to do everything they can just to keep their team on the ice.
Yeah, totally. And it's definitely one to watch. And it's tough when you lose some of your top players. Vegas is out with some top players just for different reasons. So it's kind of like COVID's almost like an injury in essence for some teams, as Scheifele and Wheeler out for them. And you got Stone and Pacioretty and Tuck out for Vegas, and their offense. We might get into that a little bit later on too, man. The Vegas's depth. And now 3 injuries is pretty key, but man, their second to fourth lines right now are just not very good. But one team that is struggling all over, and there's lots of focus about the tough start of Montreal, but lots of focus maybe on Bergevin. He does not have a contract, Frank, and it seems more and more from everybody that they expect him to not return. So my question is, if that's a foregone conclusion, does the organization want him making decisions? Not saying he would sabotage anything, but do you want him making decisions if it seems like it's a foregone conclusion that he's not coming back?
Well, I don't think that plays into it at all. I think one thing that I've learned about this entire situation is how much trust Jeff Molson has in Marc Bergevin. They have a bond there that's pretty deep. And I guess it really depends on who you talk to in terms of how that situation is playing out there. Because I've mentioned it on this pod previously, the idea that there were people out there talking in NHL circles saying, going back to the Cup final last year, that they thought that would be Marc Bergevin's last year and he'd walk away, especially if they won it, just right off into the sunset, deliver a championship in such a pressure-packed market. And then, you're a hero. You're never buying a meal or a drink in that town ever again. And so that didn't happen. He's back and he's now in the last year of his deal. And a lot of people took what he said and really interesting scenario too, that he's addressing the media as this team is off to such a tough start. He felt that it was necessary to come out, and it's not just the players and the coaches that take the bullets, that he is accountable as well. And so I commend him for that. And he sort of gave it the whole, well, don't ask me about, I'd really appreciate it if you don't ask me about my contract and my situation. And we all know in the media, that's not how it works. Like anytime he makes himself available, he gets 7-8 times a year that happens, that he's going to come out and people are going to ask those types of questions. So in one way, it's sort of deflected a little bit from, the start that his team has had, which has been so ugly. And on the other hand, it also sort of raised some eyebrows, is one quote saying that, yes, in a perfect world, I'd like to be back as GM of the Canadiens next year. And I guess my first thought, kind of knowing what other people around the NHL circles have talked about, as I just shared, is that what else is he going to say? Like, what's he going to say at that point? No, I want to move on and do something different, and this is going to be my last year and I'm going to honor my contract. Like, he can't say that. He needs to step down immediately at that point, just to answer the exact question that you laid out to start the conversation. So there's some push and pull. I'm sure that, if he is signing a new deal, that he'd like to be fairly compensated, but I mean, let's see what happens. I don't, I guess in some ways I don't necessarily understand all of the hoopla surrounding it. He's the GM, he's under contract, and there's lots of people that are in the final year of their deals where there's some speculation and some questions, but like at a certain point, what happens on the ice is what matters.
Let's get to our big guest. We'll get to some more topics in a sec, but we don't like him to wait. Our big guest today is brought to you by ESPN Plus. They've become a must-have for hockey fans. Get access to more than 1,000 out-of-market NHL games and 75 weekly national games all season long. Plus, stream thousands of live events from the best leagues and the biggest tournaments in the world. Exclusive originals, the complete 30 for 30 library, premium articles, fantasy tools, and much, much more. You get it all at ESPN Plus. Sign up now. Go to espnplus.com/DFO.
Hey, I got to tell you, I watched, just a quick plug for ESPN Plus. They have this thing multicast on there. So you can put up 4 games at once on your screen and toggle the audio back and forth. Me and my son had a field day watching 4 games at once the other night. And by the way, we need to talk about this later in the pod, but there is a story, a 30 for 30. I think it's an E60 story that's on the ESPN Plus app. It's called A Love Story. We'll talk about it after. Pat LaFontaine's daughter. I cried twice watching it. I'm telling you, it's one of the saddest and most uplifting things I've ever seen. So we'll talk about that after. Let's talk to our man, Everett. Our next guest is simply known as The Voice. His career started, he's a native of Ann Arbor, Michigan, started in the USHL with the Youngstown Phantoms, also did some Bowling Green State University hockey, worked his way up to the Cincinnati Cyclones of the ECHL, and he was one of the first employees of the Seattle Kraken. Everett Fitzhugh is the radio play-by-play voice of the Kraken. Everett, welcome to the Daily Face-Off Rundown. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. When I hear that resume, man, it's been a pretty long journey to get to this point.
Yes, it has, and we're excited to learn about it and find out how you got into it and worked your way up through the ranks. But I got to start here. So, as I mentioned, one of the first employees hired by the Kraken. I feel like, you know, the franchise was just a few days old, and I'm like, wow, they've already got a radio play-by-play guy. You were in there so early, so soon. So all that excitement and hype, you know, they're building the team up, you know, so much passion in the Seattle market. And all this time goes by, and we finally get to when the Kraken are about to play their first games. And you had announced it on Twitter. Our friend Ryan Clark at The Athletic had written about it. And you know, you're about to go on this first road trip and you get a positive COVID-19 test and can't go. Just reading about it, my heart was broken for you, knowing all the work that was put in to get to that point. What have the last couple of weeks been like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely something that I don't think you ever expect to happen, especially when you're fully vaccinated. I think that was the crazy part for me is my wife and I, we've been vaccinated since end of May, fully vaccinated mid-May, and we both have been on the shelf for the last 10 days. So it was definitely kind of a gut punch, but, you know, luckily we were able to get someone to fill in, and Ian and Furness here locally in Seattle. So did a good job of holding the fort down. But yeah, it was definitely something I don't think you ever imagined that's going to happen. You spend the last year really pumping up the team and getting everybody excited and being so involved in this process. And then you get a phone call that says, hey, you've got COVID. And, you know, honestly, even in the beginning, it was very much like, you know what, it's only Friday. We'll wait and see. You know, we're not leaving for Vegas until Monday, and, you know, we'll get things going. So I'm like, all right. So I'm sitting around watching college football all day on Saturday, and 6 a.m. Sunday rolls around, and I get a text message from our training staff that says, yeah, so you got a confirmed test, so you're going to be in quarantine for 10 days. So, yeah, it was a pretty rough go of it. But hey, you know, we're back and ready to go for Saturday. Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure you had a serious case of FOMO just watching the team on that inaugural road trip. But you know, you're feeling okay, and you, as you said, you are good to go for Saturday night's home opener.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling like $1,000,000 right now. I am ready to go, and my symptoms kind of subsided maybe around Saturday. It got a little dicey there for a second. I'm not gonna lie. My wife and I both actually caught COVID, so it was basically who was the least sick. That was who was going to do the chores around the house and take care of the other one. So a couple of days I was pretty rough, and she did an awesome job, and other days she was pretty rough, and I had to step up and do the same. So. But yeah, we're both feeling good. I'm feeling great, and I've been back in the office now. Today was my first day back. The team had the day off yesterday, but there's still been so much going on this week. So I'm ready to go, and I'm back to 100%.
Everett, you have a unique journey, and you mentioned listening to your intro from Frank. Like you're a guy who worked his way up, which is like a lot of players. A lot of players, they start out in junior or college, and then they go minor pro, and then luckily enough to get to the NHL. And for you as a play-by-play guy, like there's fewer play-by-play jobs than there is NHL jobs for players, right? Like it's a tough gig to get. Tell me, kind of, was that always the goal? Like, were you like, hey, I want to be an NHL play-by-play guy, and that's what I'm working towards? And, was there ever a time where you're like, you know what, I'm not sure that's going to happen? Or kind of give me a sense of that, because it's tough to get an NHL play-by-play gig.
It is. It really is. And for me, I think I always knew that I wanted to work in sports. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was a kid growing up, I was going to be the late, great Stuart Scott on the Sports Center desk. That was going to be me. I didn't even know that play-by-play was an option as a career until I got to college. I thought you just kind of fell into it by accident. So when I went to Bowling Green, a buddy of mine actually dragged me off the couch one day in my dorm, and I went to a student radio organization meeting, and I fell in love. I loved everything that I heard. I did some board hopping. I did some intermission and halftime hosting for football and basketball. And I got my first hockey game actually as a color analyst my freshman year of college. It was January of 2007. And I fell in love with broadcasting hockey. And I knew right then and there that I wanted to be an NHL play-by-play announcer. So I was our primary color analyst for 3 years at BG. And then my last 2 years in school, so I was a fifth-year senior. So my fourth year in school, my fifth year in school, and then my first year out of school, I did the play-by-play for the varsity team. And then after that, I went to Chicago for the USHL league office, where I was in their communications department. Went to Youngstown after a year and a half and stayed in Youngstown for a year, doing play-by-play and PR and social and all that other stuff. And after that, I was in Cincinnati for 5 years in the ECHL. So it's been quite the journey. But it's funny you say that, Jason, because there were definitely times when I'm not going to name some of the cities, but you pull into a couple of cities for the umpteenth time, and you're humping bags at 2:00 in the morning and hanging gear and helping your equipment staff out. And you're happy to do it because it's all hands on deck, but you're like, man, am I ever going to get out of here? Am I ever going to get off the buses? And I say that knowing that there are guys out there like John Walton who were in the minors for 12 years. There were guys, Dave Mishkin, he was in the minors for a long time. A lot of these broadcasters in the NHL, they paid their dues. Jack Michaels up in Edmonton, he was in the minors for 12, 13 years. So I say that only having been at that level for 5 years in pro and then another couple junior in college, but still there were some times when you say to yourself, man, is this worth it? Is it going to pay off? And ultimately it did.
And Everett, you mentioned Stuart Scott off the top, and I think it's unique that in hockey, because let's be honest, there's not a lot of black play-by-play guys. So there's yourself now. That there's Kevin Weeks. Of course, there's many more guys now than there was. But you could be like the Stuart Scott for a lot of young kids, because I think it's really important for someone to see whether you're black, you're white, you're yellow, it doesn't matter, but to see someone like you in that role. Can you kind of take a second to think of how there's going to be kids in the future here to say, hey, I want to be the next Everett Fitzhugh?
Yeah, it's definitely something that is really. It's interesting and it's humbling to think about. I actually got into hockey as a hockey fan watching the late 90s, early 2000s Edmonton Oilers. My first ever hockey game that I remember watching, Mike Greer and George the Rock were on the same team. A few years later, Anson Carter joined the team. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think those late 90s, early 2000s Oilers teams, there were 5 black players.
Joaquin Gage, Sean Brown.
Wasn't Sean Bell?
Sean Bell was there too, yeah.
So there were a lot of guys. And then growing up in Detroit, we got CBC over in Windsor. So I saw Kevin Weeks for the first time. I saw Jerome McGinley for the first time. I saw all of these players who looked like me having success. And that was huge. I didn't have a lot of those positive black influences within the game of hockey to look up to. So every Saturday when I could see those guys on my TV, it let me know that there was a place for me and I belonged in the game of hockey. So for me to be able to be in this position, I think it's huge. I don't think anyone ever sets out to be the first, but if you find yourself in that position and when you are in that position, I think you owe it to not only the sport, I think you owe it to the culture, but I think you owe it to yourself to be that person that you never had. So, there's going to be a third grade, 9-year-old black kid growing up in Detroit or South Seattle or Edmonton or wherever the case may be, who may look on TV and say, man, hockey's not for me. This game isn't for me. And I want to be the person to say, well, not so fast. I mean, you belong, your voice belongs. And that goes for any historically underrepresented population. That goes for black kids, that goes for Hispanic kids, South Asian kids, women. How many young girls are playing the game of hockey and they've been told that there's no place for them. So I want to be that person that can let that next generation of hockey fan, player, broadcaster, whatever the case may be, know there's a place for them and that they belong in this game.
It's such a powerful message, Everett. How much have the Kraken helped in terms of surrounding you with other people that, maybe are a little bit different compared to the other 31 teams in the NHL and building a more diverse employee and staff network and getting as many people involved as possible that may have been underrepresented previously to really build it from the ground up and say, look, this is how we're going to do things in our organization right from the start?
It's huge. That is one of the pillars of our organization. And honestly, it's not about surrounding me with those people. It's about doing things the right way. Todd Lewicki, our CEO, really has taken this head on, and he is someone who firmly believes in fundamentally changing where we see the game going on a cultural and social level. Again, like I said, growing up, I was told and I was shown that hockey wasn't a place for the young black kid from the city. And now to be able to work in an organization that fundamentally believes in women's voices, in black voices, in different religions and sexual orientations. It doesn't matter who you are. There's a place for you in the game. And I joke about it sometimes because, I've had more black and minority coworkers on meetings today than I've had in my entire career, period. And it's something that the Seattle Kraken, it's not a line for us. It's not the PR company position. It is something that we fundamentally believe in trying to change the face of the game. We're very active in the community here, especially in South Seattle and some of the other underrepresented communities in our city and in our region. And we want those communities to come to our games. We want those communities to feel like they have a home, whether it's at Climate Pledge Arena, whether it's at KCI, our community iceplex. We want people to know that you belong within our organization and we embrace you, we welcome you, and going into an office every day where you see black men and women, you see Asian men and women, Hispanic men and women, you see so many different backgrounds and so many different people all fighting toward the same goal. It's really, really inspiring, and it makes it so much fun to go to work every day.
Yeah, that's so awesome to hear, and frankly, so overdue for really the sport in general. And I'm hoping that the Kraken can help set the bar for how these other NHL teams begin to operate and process moving forward. I wanted to pivot back to something that you talked about previously, and it was some of the other minor league broadcasters that have pounded the pavement before you and worked their way up. I was wondering how some of those guys may have helped you get to this position that you're in now, and how you may have leaned on them along the way.
It's a tight, small fraternity, as you guys know. I mean, I've heard the same story about John Cooper as the head coach of the Green Bay Gamblers in 6 different circles, right? Like everybody knows everybody else, and you have to lean on each other. And there were times when Jack Michaels was actually very instrumental, and I almost landed a job with the Alaska Aces in the ECHL thanks to Jack Michaels. I actually ran into him at the NHL draft when it was held in Jersey during the lockout year, and he gave me his card. We kept in touch, and it was me and another guy, and Jack was very instrumental in helping me get that position. John Walton from the Capitals, he called me up one day and said the summer that the Capitals won the Cup, they beat in Vegas, and I want to say a month or so later, I get a phone call from Jack Michaels or from John Walton, excuse me, and he said, "Hey, preseason's coming up. Would you want to call the Capitals Bruins game, our first preseason game in DC?" And after I picked my jaw up off the floor, I was absolutely. So he gave me my first opportunity to do an NHL game. So those guys have been very instrumental. And when I got the job here in Seattle, when the news went public, I got so many phone calls from broadcasters all over hockey, play-by-play guys, reporters, studio hosts. I had guys from the NBA, from Major League Baseball calling and Twitter DMing me and all of that to say that, hey, welcome to the Big Four fraternity. Welcome to the NHL. So it was really, really nice to have that support and to be able to lean on these guys and to know that as a broadcaster who's gone through the minor leagues and I'm 32 years old, but it feels weird to say that I've grown up as a hockey broadcaster listening to these guys. And now to call some of my favorite broadcasters, from the time I was a freshman in college up until now, to be able to call them my colleagues is so cool. It's so amazing.
And so, Everett, you also got a ringing endorsement from the one and only Doc Emrick. Is this true?
Yeah, we Bowling Green Falcons stick together. So I'm not sure what was said by the legend, Mr. Doc Emrick, Dr. Emrick, but I've been told that it was a glowing recommendation. And Todd Lewicki tells that story that, I heard from Doc, and that's kind of all that I needed to go ahead and make that initial phone call. So, Doc's another one that he reached out to me, and I actually had the opportunity to meet Doc and work with Doc. He came back to Bowling Green for an alumni weekend when I was in school. I thought I was going to interview him before a game, and he actually comes up the stairs and joins me for the first period. So Doc Emrick was my color analyst for a period. So that's something that's definitely one of the highlights of my career for sure. But, Doc's another one. There are a couple of us Bowling Green alums out there. Evan Pivnik, who was in Adirondack at the ECHL, and he's done so much for Evan in terms of getting his resume and demo in front of people. So Doc's a guy that has definitely helped me knowingly and unknowingly. Doc Emrick he's such a sweetheart of a guy, and he's the best. He's the best when it comes to that kind of thing. So yeah, Doc gave me the recommendation. I don't know what was said. I think it's better left unsaid. So in my mind, it's this, this magnanimous speech that he gave and then dropped the mic and walked out. So in my mind, that's what happened.
Everett, it's pretty unique, to be a play-by-play guy in the NHL, but to be a play-by-play guy, to be the first play-by-play guy of the Seattle Kraken on TV, like you have the opportunity to educate the fans. Now, Seattle's been a long-time hockey market for, obviously going Thunderbirds. It's unbelievable. I remember back in the old barn, man, it was crazy. I went there a few games when my brother was playing for Portland, and it was a gong show. It was so fun. So you look at at calling the games, and what's the plan to try to mix in for the fans who are maybe saying, hey, you know what, I want to learn hockey? How do you because it might be a little bit different than maybe, calling games in Edmonton, for the first time than it would be in Seattle. How do you balance that as a play-by-play guy? What's going to be your approach?
Yeah, and I actually got a taste of that during the preseason as well, and it worked. It worked pretty well. I treated our broadcasts almost as a hockey 101. If there were times when I could break, why was that play offsides? What is icing? That's the number one question that new hockey fans want to know. What the heck is icing? So explaining what that is, goaltender interference, some of the new rules, line changes, all of that kind of stuff, you can weave that into your storytelling. And I think it's huge. And I think for us, because like you mentioned, Jason, this is such a hockey market already. People that say that Seattle and Washington isn't a hockey market. I mean, it's not an NHL market, but you've got 5, 6 Western Hockey League teams within 4 hours of the city. You've got the Vancouver Canucks up the road, in which a lot of folks from Seattle have gone to Canucks games over the years and are now looking forward to having their own team that they can root for. So hockey is here. This is not an illiterate hockey town, but trying to educate a large casual fan base on some of the nuances of hockey has been fun. I'm not even going to say challenging, because everybody here is so excited to learn, and they're so excited for this team to bring something new to the city of Seattle and to the state of Washington and the greater Pacific Northwest region. So to be able to be that first voice and to help educate these fans on some of the subtleties of the game has been fun. And I think our fans have really responded well to it in the preseason games and then in the first 5 regular season games that have been done. We've done a really good job of educating fans while also not, doing it in a condescending or talking down kind of way.
So quickly, let's get to the Kraken on the ice. You know what? There was a lot of comparisons to Vegas, and I'm just not sure that's fair. Vegas is like the outlier of outliers when it comes to expansion teams. But Yanni Gourde now will come back in. He's healthy. Kind of give me your evaluation of what you've seen early from the Kraken and maybe what you expect to come here now that they're home and what's going to be a rocking Saturday night.
Yeah, I think we still get the comparisons to Vegas, right? Just because that's the recent, that was the new kid on the block until we showed up. So I think through these first 5 games, all of the questions that people had in the summer, I think still kind of are at the forefront. Where's the offense going to come from? That top line, that McCann, Eberle, Schwartz line, everybody kind of went into this season thinking that was going to be your top scoring line. Can Jordan Eberle get back to the Edmonton Oilers Jordan Eberle? With Schwartz and McCann now getting more minutes, can they find more of an offensive touch to their game? And I think it's only been 5 games. There's a lot of promise on this team, but I think trying to navigate your first 5 games, trying to navigate your franchise's infancy. I think Mark Giordano said it best the other day. There are people in this locker room who care. And maybe they care to a fault because they're trying not to make mistakes. And I was at practice earlier today, and you would think after coming home 1-3-1, it would be kind of somber and melancholy. The guys were lively. They were jovial. They were laughing. They were smiling. They were having a good time. You can tell that these guys are playing for each other, and it's right there. It is so close when it comes to trying to figure this out. And I think you have an opportunity with Vancouver and Montreal coming in, 2 teams that are combined 1-6-1, I believe, coming into Thursday's games. They've got their own struggles. You're home on home ice. You've got Vancouver, who is going to probably be your rival. You've got the return of the Montreal Canadiens for the first time in over 100 years to Seattle. So right there, your first 2 games, those storylines, those are some sexy storylines. And if I'm in that locker room, it's an opportunity for me to say we're going to go out and get 2 wins. And I think Dave Haxtell's got complete belief and confidence in the lineup that he has. You did have a little bit of the COVID scare with Tyler Yaremchuk out, and then a few of the guys who were able to get back. You've got some injuries now, just guys trying to find their way, but there's no panic in that locker room. And I think defensively, this team is still fine. Philip Grubauer, he's the reigning Vezina Trophy finalist for a reason. And you now are putting a guy like Chris Drieger into a position where he can get number 1 minutes. You've got Joey Decord, who played really well, albeit in a losing effort the other night, still played well. So I think there's still a lot of those questions that need to be answered from the summertime, but there's no panic. There's no panic around this team for sure.
Yeah, and Everett, no panic also because someone had asked me to explain what I thought of the Kraken's initial road trip, and I kind of was like, it was like more or less like typical expansion franchise. And I don't mean that in any sort of demeaning way. It was like there were some really good things. There were some down moments, the loss in Philly, and then there was just some things that were just kind of average. And so I think you take that and you build off of it in your home opener. Last one from me, and we'll play a little rapid fire, but I wanted to get your take quickly just on what we can expect from the environment on Saturday. The one thing, obviously I'm looking forward to seeing Climate Pledge Arena. It sounds like such a special place. And from what I've seen so far, it looks awesome.
Yeah.
But I think back to what the Vegas Golden Knights, and again, not to make the comparison, but the reason why I'm mentioning it is game presentation. They set the bar. And Seattle, one of the first things they did, they went out and hired 2 of the big guns from the Vegas Golden Knights in that game presentation department to now come to Seattle and bring that to their building. What is one thing that you're looking forward to in terms of opening this new building and this new franchise?
Man, I think for me, it's going to be our fans experiencing NHL hockey for the first time in a very, very long time. And then also getting winter sports back since the Sonics left. This is a city, once Seahawks season is over, you got a couple of months of just, all right, well, now what? Mariners don't open up until March. So I don't know. What are we going to do here? The Blazers are down the street, I guess. But you now have a winter sport here in Seattle, and fans are so excited about it. But as far as in the arena goes, that place is going to be loud. The amenities in that place are going to be something that you've never seen before. I look at some of the brand new buildings in the NHL. You look at Vegas, you look at Edmonton, you look at a lot of those newer buildings in the league. And I think there's a little bit in all of them. Obviously the new Islanders building as well out in Belmont, but the game presentation is going to be awesome. And just watching Johnny and Lamont walking around the office with their staff, the swagger, the confidence that they have, they know that they've put together an amazing presentation. The lights, the sounds, the visuals, the what we're going to have on the ice and in the stands and in the crowd. This is going to be an experience that's going to start from, if you're taking the monorail or public transportation to the game, it's going to start from the second you get on that monorail all the way to the game. When you walk in the building, when you're at your seat, when you go get concessions, it's going to continue through the final horn, through the parking lot, through the plaza. When you get back on the monorail to go to your cars, this is a full experience for all 5 senses. And it's something that, again, I haven't seen the staff. We haven't gotten a preview. We're all going to be excited and surprised with our fans. And I think for me, I'm looking forward to this broadcast because I guarantee you there's going to be a couple of moments when, you're looking around, our color analyst is going to be saying something, and I'm going to notice something out of the corner of my eye. And then I'm going to revert back to 12-year-old fan Everett. And I'm going to be like, whoa, you see that? That was awesome. So I'm really looking forward to just everything that we're going to have in this building and getting folks in there for the first time on Saturday.
Awesome, Everett. Look forward to it. I'm pumped I got center ice. I'll be watching it on Saturday night. So best of luck in your home opener in the regular season. Now, we always like to end with rapid fire. There's only one rule. You have to answer the questions. All right. So here we go. For a young Everett Fitzhugh, who was your team growing up?
I was an Edmonton Oilers fan.
Really?
Yeah, because of Mike Greer and George Barak. Growing up in Detroit, I mean, I always wanted the Wings to do well, but if I had a favorite team, it was the Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, see, when you first popped into the waiting room and you said that you listened to Jason on 1260 for the last number of years, I was like, oh, he's just being nice. That's so polite. But no, like you're like a legit Oiler fan.
I am a legit. I listen to Dustin Nielsen in the morning every day for probably, without fail, 6-7 years straight.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, so you were a fan for the decade of darkness. It was not a good time.
Yeah, I was there for 06, and when the Oilers made it to the semifinal against Anaheim, man, that was one of the proudest moments as an Oiler fan for me to snap the skid.
Oh, okay, awesome. Now, will we have like a signature goal call from Fitzhugh this year?
I'm not a kitschy guy. I'm not that guy that has like a catchphrase or anything. I have a power play goal call that I'll break out sometimes, and then I've got an overtime winner goal call, or just a winning call. But other than that, I've got a unique style, a lot of volume, a lot of energy, but Mike Lang is one of the best, and RJ up in Buffalo is one of the best, and those guys can do it like no other. And I'm like, if I even try to have a shtick or a catchphrase, I'm going to fall on my face. So I'm going to leave it to those guys. But no, I don't really have like a catchphrase or anything.
So when you were practicing before you actually called your first play-by-play game, where did you were you calling games on TV? Were you sitting in a corner of a rink with a little recorder? How did you hone your play-by-play skills?
I did that. I did sit in the corner of the rink. I called games. I called some high school hockey play-by-play. But I actually, in the summertime, the summer before I got the job at Bowling Green. So I was going into my first year. I actually turned on NHL 2003, and I put the computer against each other, and I muted Jim Houston, and I called video games. Really? Just in the summer, I called video games. I probably did 20-30 games that summer, just trying to get everything right and all of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's actually pretty cool, man. I like that idea. Beats my alternative. I started out just going to the rink at minor hockey games and sitting in a corner like an idiot, looking like you're talking to yourself. So I think
I've done that too. Don't worry.
The video game would be a lot better. So now you're obviously a sports fan. Mm-hmm. So if you could call any sport other than hockey, not saying you will, what would be the sport you'd want to call?
Oh man. I would probably say baseball. Baseball is my favorite sport. I love baseball. My love for baseball is why I don't work in baseball. I can still go to a game and, have a hot dog, have a couple of beers and just sit and enjoy it. But, if I had the opportunity to call a Major League Baseball game, that would be a lot of fun.
How are your hockey playing skills?
What hockey playing skills? I learned how to skate when I was 22 years old. I took an extracurricular class my fifth year in college. So I didn't even learn how to skate until I was 22. I've played 2 games of intramural men's rec league hockey. I won 7 faceoffs out of 9. I had 1 shot on goal, and I'd never skated in equipment before. So by the time I got to the blue line, the play was already coming back. So I had to like Bambi leg it and slowly turn around. And then I got to the other blue line, and then here comes the play again. So I was dynamite in the neutral zone, but I never saw either offensive or defensive zone the entire game.
Well, guess what, Everett? Now that you're a play-by-play guy for hockey, lots of teams have staff games, man. Oh, yeah. So you're gonna have to pick it up, and then in a few years we'll see. So if Everett Fitzhugh though did have ability of a player, and you'll get in the future, whose game would you want to have? Who is like your ultimate player, forward or defenseman?
Oh my goodness. So I mean, everyone loves the goal scorers, but there is something to say about being responsible defensively. If I had to pick a player who I would model my game after, I would probably go Jerome McGinley mixed with a little bit of Anson Carter, and you gotta throw Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby in there. I mean, if I can score some goals, that'd be great. But I would love to be a good skater. I can hit and drop the gloves if I had to, but I would say throw those four into one player, and then there you go.
Well, I was looking at the size of your mitts. I definitely think you could hold your own if you have to get in the fisticuff department. So that leads me to one final one.
Okay.
Who is the toughest Edmonton Oiler of all time?
Oh my goodness. So you have to remember, I didn't really start paying attention and watching hockey and getting to know players until probably maybe 97, 98. So
okay.
The players that I was on the tail end of, like the Marty McSorley era. He's obviously one of them. But for me, if you're asking players that I've seen, it's got to be George Laraque. It's got to be that's the guy for me.
You could have a Royal Rumble of Dave Semenko,
okay,
Marty McSorley, Dave Brown, who was an assassin, George Laraque, and then Steve McIntyre might be one of the toughest guys.
Another one, yeah.
Those five guys, man, you put the Oilers' five toughest guys against almost any other team's five toughest. It would be a great Royal Rumble to see what happens. So George is definitely he's a very good pick.
Like being from Philly, I'm insulted that you would even say that.
Oilers, who are Philly's five toughest guys?
Come on.
Who are Philly's five toughest? Well, Dave Brown played on both though.
He did. So let's start with Dave the Hammer Schultz. Then we can go with Dave Brown. Like we had maybe one of the most feared modern day fighters, Jody Shelley. I mean, go through the list. Every era, Sandy McCarthy. There were tons and tons of tough guys that have come through Philly.
Oh.
I'd have to go back at Sean Antoski. Like I got to go through my entire childhood to start throwing names at you, because every year that I ever watched the Flyers growing up, they always had guys that could hold their own.
Oh,
and I would put anyone from the Flyers organization up against the entire Oilers list.
Well, and also for me growing up too, remember I grew up in Detroit with the grind line.
Bob Probert.
So Bob Probert at the beginning.
Kosher.
But then you had Kosher, you had McCarty, you had Maltby and Draper. So that grind lined era of the Red Wings, that's another era of guys that I grew up watching. And LaPointe could hold his own. Shanahan obviously could hold his own. So there were a lot of guys in that late 90s, early 2000s era for sure.
Well, many tough guys I've talked to said maybe the hardest puncher was Joey Kosher. He could crush guys.
Oh, yeah.
Colton Orr is another guy for the Rangers, because Colton Orr, I remember Jason Strutt, Colton Orr got mad one night when the boogeyman was a healthy scratch because he wanted to fight him. And Strutt was like, are you kidding me right now? So it was crazy times, man. Everett, congratulations on the gig. We'll look forward to watching you Saturday night, the home opener for the Kraken. Frank's going to be there live in person. And you know what? He gets a little nervous with fireworks, so hopefully you guys don't surprise him too much.
Well, hey, Everett, this is a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, looking forward to meeting you, and congrats on all your success. Can't wait to listen.
Thanks, guys, so much. Looking forward to seeing you guys in person, and let me know what you think about Seattle. I can't wait to get the opinions. Of what
I love the city, man. I've been there many times. I can't wait to come again. It's one of my wife's favorite, so it's an easy sell for me to go to a road trip in Seattle.
There you go.
Everett Fitzhugh, man, I love his passion for the game. He's a diehard sports fan. I love fans who live in one city and then they're a fan of another team. Like, I grew up in Edmonton. I was a huge Hartford Whaler fan. Huge Whaler fan.
See, I commend it and I like it, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, my head would always explode being from Philly, being like, you're a fan of the Mets? Like, what? Yeah. Or like whatever team, or like, get out of here. Like, you're from Philly, root for a Philly team, or get out. That's just my own insular Philly thing. So it blows my mind, but I could, hearing how Everett got into hockey and then also, the reason behind it.
Yes.
He hit it on the head. You look for someone that looks like you, some path forward for you and that welcomes you into that space, whether it's sports or whatever it is. And, you know, whether the Oilers knew it or not, that was really powerful in the late 90s.
Well, I don't know if you've seen that. There was a documentary. They had all of them on recently talking about that time. And I know Gage really well. Like, he's really proud of being on that team. Like, that was really life-changing. He's met so many Black people over time that said, I was a huge fan of the Oilers just because of that. Like, it gave me someone. And so, you know what? I'm sure Mike Greer would love to hear that story from Everett as to why, I became an Oilers fan basically because of you and George Laraque. And then, obviously he liked the team, but that's super important. And I think that's something that, we're going to see more and more in the NHL moving forward. And that's fantastic. And Everett, of course, was our big guest, brought to you by ESPN Plus. Now, before we get to Tyler, Frank, you had the story. Tell me about this Pat LaFontaine daughter show, because I gotta see this now.
Yeah, so it's unbelievable. It's called A Love Story, and it's the long and short of it. I don't want to give too much away, but Pat LaFontaine is part of the documentary. It's like 35, 40 minutes, and basically his daughter meets this, unbelievable, successful, teacher and phenomenal high school athlete that she falls in love with, and it's tragic in a lot of ways. So honestly, I can't even explain the emotions that I felt watching that doc, that E60. It's powerful, and I don't want to give it away, but just it's 35 or 40 minutes really well spent. I watched it the first time, couldn't stop crying. Watched it again, and it was like waterworks all over again. So, it's so good.
Yeah, the 30 for 30.
And I wish there was a happy ending to it, but there isn't. And so Randall McCoy, you'll meet him in the doc, and it's just sad, but it's also uplifting at the same time. The bond and love that these two people share.
No, hey man, if it gets the emotions from you, it's great. A little bit of a tearjerker is never bad for anyone. I love it. Let's welcome in Tyler Yaremchuk for another rip-roaring edition of Buy or Sell.
Yeah, won't be any tears flowing after Buy or Sell. Just hard-hitting questions coming at both of you here.
I was gonna say maybe some for you if I bust your questions again.
As always, Buy or Sell is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash, where you can use the promo code RundownDD. Gets you 25% off, no delivery fees on your first order. Let's dig right into it. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl off to a fire start. I say they will be the first teammates since Lemieux and Yager to each score 50 goals in the same season. Frank, you buying or selling?
Buy. I said McDavid is a 150-point player this season. To think if he gets there, he's got to have 50 goals, I would imagine. Draisaitl's already been there. McDavid's knocked on the door previously. I think his career high is 44? Is that right? Mm-hmm. 44, 41, something like that. He's been close. It's been a point of emphasis for him to score more goals, and I see no reason why they can't get there together.
God, I love offense, but my preseason prediction had McDavid getting 50 for the first time and Draisaitl finishing with 47. So I will stick with that. I would love to see it, man, because 50 is so hard. Teammates to do 50, you kidding me? It'd be great, but I don't think it happens.
I was saying, imagine the building if they were to get it on the same night, how crazy that would be. Anyways, speaking of hot starts, Steven Stamkos is doing some really good stuff through a handful of games for the Lightning. I'm saying it's all because of that Olympic team, and I'm saying it's enough for him to get on. Jason, you buying or selling Stamkos as an Olympian?
Well, the motivation is definitely there. He's talked openly about it. I would agree with it. Is it enough to get on the team, man? The Canadian Olympic team is so deep. So when I did my mock at the start, I don't think I had him on the team. But it's all going to be about who's playing hot going into it. Right? It's kind of different. There's no camp. There's no line combinations where these guys had chemistry. Maybe it helps him because him and, Point might play together more without Kucherov. So, you know what? I'm still going to sell, though. I'm going to say no, he doesn't get on.
I'm going to buy. It's such a motivating factor. I've mentioned it before. Tyler and I talked to him about this in Chicago at the Player Media Tour. He doesn't hold back in saying it. And here's the cool thing about the Olympics, and Steve Greeley actually posted his mock Canadian Olympic team on dailyfaceoff.com today. and he has Steven Stamkos on it. The cool thing about it is that it's sort of a living, breathing list. Like, we're going to keep updating that story as the season goes on, just like Team Canada will be, leading to the roster selections in early January. And I think at this moment he's on. And, I just have a hard time believing there's that many more players that are more talented than Steven Stamkos with what he brings, the way he digs in. I think you can use him anywhere in your lineup. He's not one of those guys that you're like, oh, he has to play in the top 6 or he's not valuable. He brings other things to the team that I think will enable him to make the cut.
And being on 2 Stanley Cup winners doesn't hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of hot starts, St. Louis Blues, one of the undefeated teams still remaining in the NHL. I'm going to say, I'm loving them off this hot start. I've been blown away with how good their forward group has been. I'm going to say they not only make the playoffs, but they have home ice advantage in round 1. Frank, you buying or selling the Blues?
I'm selling. I think they're off to a hot start. They're going to catch a little bit of adversity now. Brandon Saad's the first guy out with COVID. I don't know. I'm not a Binnington guy. I think he's been entirely average the last couple of years. And when I look at their offense, I don't know how sustainable it is. And I'm still not entirely sold on their top 6, their 6 defensemen. I'm going to sell. I had the Blues making the playoffs. I had them being the 5th team in from the Central, and I'll stick with that.
Well, I don't know how many more games they're going to get 3-on-0s from the blue line in. What the hell's going on with Vegas's defense in that one? That was amazing to me. But I will also sell. I think home ice advantage is going to be pretty tough in the Central, and I don't know if they're going to be the top 2 teams.
Those are some hot starts. On the other side of things, a couple of slow starts. The Blackhawks and Montreal Canadiens, both brutal to start the year. I'm going to say neither of them turn it around, and their slow starts have sunk them. Habs and Hawks both out of the playoffs. Jason, you buying or selling?
Well, I have to sell only because I picked the Hawks to make the playoffs, and it's only been the first week. I can't screw myself already. So I'll say no. The Canadiens, I didn't pick to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They just can't score any goals. The Hawks, they got to get a turnaround defensively here, big time. So to get going, I still have faith. Maybe it's just all the new faces before they gel, but I'm holding out hope that the Chicago Blackhawks will make my prediction look good.
I don't want to bail on the Habs yet. I didn't see the Hawks from the beginning, but I had the Habs as a team that was going to get close, knocking on the door to the playoffs, and maybe that still happens. I was saying all along in the preseason, I didn't think they were going to be as bad as everyone thought, and here they are. Their GM holding a press conference a few days into the season to try and calm things down. I just don't know that I see it. It's been easier than ever these last couple of years. It used to be if you're out of the playoffs by by U.S. Thanksgiving, that you have no chance to play your way back in based on the way the standings work. There's been a number of teams that have done it these last couple of years. I just don't see either the Habs or the Hawks having enough skill and or talent to do so.
All right, I reached out to our friend Dan from Hockey Fights for this last one. We're dropping the mitts for the final question of buy or sell. Last season, 56-game shortened season, we had 196 fighting majors. I prorated that. It works out, that would have been about 296 over an 82-game season. I'm going to say we get 300 fighting majors this year. We already got 17, not counting Thursday night's games. Players seem fired up now that all the crowds are full and things are back to normal. So I think fighting will be on the uptick for once this year. 300 fighting majors. Frank, you buying or selling?
Selling. I think it's easy to have it at the start. Everyone's emotional. As you mentioned, the buildings are packed, and I don't know, we've already seen some attendance dips in a number of markets, 5,000 or 6,000 short in Montreal. Not to say that it's not going to be a fun atmosphere in certain places, because it will. A lot of the U.S. markets are sold out. I just think that isn't sustainable, that same kind of emotion. And my guess is we end up somewhere around 275, 280, and just a slight downturn.
Fight. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I believe it will be over 300 this year. I just think the emotion there's more rivalries. I think there's going to be a lot of teams still in the mix come down the stretch, and players are going to be, there's going to be a few more of those tilts from the non-usual candidates, which to me makes it exciting. So I will say 300 plus.
There you go. Those are your 5 for buy or sell. Another stirring rendition of it, brought to you by DoorDash.
Awesome. Well, Frank, unique. You're on the road in Seattle. Have fun at the season opener on Saturday night. It'll be a great time, and we look forward to the pod on Monday. Tell me what the best food in the arena is. That's your reporting job for the weekend. Is what is the go-to at the Seattle Kraken arena?
You can't ask me about the arena. I don't eat a lot of arena food. I can tell you all about the Seattle food scene, though, probably by Monday, because look at me. I mean, I dig in.
Well, you got to try something, at least one thing at the arena.
Okay, I'll report back.
You could try one. That's fair. Okay, I love it, man. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Seattle.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.